So the role of councils, we're the biggest funder of public culture, spending around £1 billion annually on the arts, heritage, museums and libraries in England. Just to give you a comparison, the Arts Council spends half of that money, 512 million. So local councils are an enormous contributor to the arts. The Theatres Trust say there are around 1,100 theatres in the UK. Councils directly run 116 of these and provide core funding or act as leaseholders to many more. Theatres Trust estimate that as many as half of charitable run theatre buildings are owned by councils. So that's over 500. Beside their direct investment in theatres, councils have an important part to play in setting the scene for cultural economies to thrive, in place shaping at a local level, in regenerating the high street, building new homes, supporting vibrant places in which people live and work. We also have a convening role at local level, can bring together partners through the creation of a strategy or local cultural consortium to promote and coordinate cultural activities across a local area. And one of the things we've done recently is to send out to all councils a cultural strategy in a box, so that councils who've now lost a huge amount of capacity have got the ability to write a cultural strategy and have an idea of how to put that together. I'd argue that council's role has never been more important now than when we were through the recovery from COVID. So I'm sure we're going to hear lots from people today about the value of theatre, and I'm not going to try to stray onto that, but I think it's something that all of us accept. Cultural industries are an anchor for many institutions, and before the pandemic, they were creating jobs faster than any other part of the economy. And I think we need to acknowledge how difficult things have been. But theatres across the country, like Slunglow in Leeds and the Old Courts in Wigan, have provided food parcels, made welfare calls, found creative ways of keeping local people engaged. And that's been really good. So what can councils do? It's in recognition of the value that theatres bring to a community that many councils have taken a proactive approach to supporting their local theatres. Where possible, and despite significant impacts of COVID on their own services, councils have relaxed grant payments, provided interest-free loans and advanced grant payments. And they've also helped theatres and other cultural sector industries apply for grants that they may not know of how to apply for. Besides distributing around 11 billion to small businesses in 2020, was part of the Small Business Grant Fund, Retail and Hospitality and Leisure Grant Fund, councils have also played an important role in providing relevant links to funding support, as well as supporting coordinating funding applications and emergency calls like the Cultural Recovery Fund. So just to give you an idea, here in Portsmouth, we have 2 theatres, both Matcham Theatres, the Theatre Royal and the King's Theatre, and the Guildhall is a concert hall. The City Council owns 2 of those, and we're buying the new Theatre Royal to rescue it because it's going bust. So councils have an enormous role to play in making sure that theatres thrive. But I think we've got to be realistic. In Portsmouth, we provide around £600,000 a year direct funding to these performance spaces. But budgets have been cut. So I've had to cut around £100 million out of Portsmouth's budgets over the years. But it's not just under this government, it's been under all governments. I've been a leader here on and off since 2004, and I've had to cut budgets under Conservative governments, Labour governments, coalition governments, everybody. So it's not a party political thing at all. But I've got real worries that what's going to happen in the future. The gap in my council between what we've had to spend and what the government has given me means I've had to set aside £11.9 million of council's funding to be able to meet the shortfall that's not been funded. And that means that money has to come from somewhere. And increasingly, as pressure mounts on budgets, more and more money has to go to social services. There's less and less money for other things. So despite the support from councils, we know that COVID has been catastrophic for culture, and particularly for theatres and the performing arts. The arts, entertainment and recreation industries have had the highest proportion of the workforce on furlough during the pandemic at 34%, compared with 9% across all industries. Theatres and performing arts venues have had to remain closed for longer than other sectors, As many as 50% are still closed under the step 3 of the roadmap. Reopening with social distancing measures in place is not possible for many theatres. The business model just simply doesn't add up if you can't have full houses. In addition, the sector is very reliant on freelancers, and we know that some sections of the workforce have been unable to access the support available to those working in particular organisations. Quickly try to find my next page, sorry. So overall, I think we are very, very pleased with some of the work the government has done. The Cultural Recovery Fund has been very good, but we are very worried for the future that this support is finishing, furlough scheme is finishing September, and we just don't know what will happen and how many institutions will fail. So I think we've got a lot of things that we would like to see developed. We'd like to see a recovery plan which includes everybody, including the LEPs, business improvement districts, creative clusters and theatres, to renew a local approach to culture, building on the profile of the sector and driving development. I think there's a lot more that can be done, particularly with LEPs, many of whom just don't seem to recognise the huge importance of cultural industries and seem to be quite old-fashioned in their view about what industries are. Many councils are already doing hugely useful work, and the LGA's Creative Places Guide provides examples of councils supporting their local creative sector. Bradford Cultural Place Partnership, for example, has just launched an ambitious new strategy that places culture at the heart of plans for recovery. So partnership working is really important. That Levelling Up Fund and Community Renewal Fund is going to be hugely important. But to achieve cultural recovery, we need an approach of partnership across the whole area. That means working in real partnership with DCMS and MHCLG, along with other main funders like the Arts Council. We find a particular issue with working with DCMS, as they don't tend to view councils as a strategic partner in terms of cultural activities. And that's a real problem. If we're talking to councils and we say, actually DCMS don't view councils as important, that's quite a difficult thing to say. And with people looking at budgets and with budgets under pressure, that sends a clear message from DCMS that they don't think councils should be spending money on culture. We don't agree, but we find DCMS a real problem in terms of working at a strategic level. So we need to make sure there's sustainable funding. Huge sums have been invested to support the sector during the pandemic, and that could all be lost if councils can't maintain their core funding for culture and leisure in the medium term. We also regard our national network of theatres as part of our national economic infrastructure and treated as such. Many theatre buildings are in a state of disrepair and need significant investment there to play their potential role in levelling up society and building back better. And many of them have spent their reserves that they've built up over the years to try to do repair work on just surviving over the last year and a half. So as an LGA, we're committed to working with partners to ensure that local government has the support it needs to continue its vital contribution to our national cultural infrastructure. Cultural Tourism and Sport Board work closely with the Arts Council, including delivering our shared improvement programme for councils for cultural departments. So I think it's really important. It's incredibly important that we work together between theatres, councils, DCMS and the Arts Council to make sure that we're able to sustain the theatres across the country. And I'm sure local government will do all it can within the very limited resources that we've got. I hope that's of some use, Andrew.
Thank you very much. It certainly is. I just wondered whether there were any of the parliamentarians on the call who wanted to ask Gerald anything specifically now, and then there'll obviously be another opportunity to do so at the end when you've heard from everybody. But if there's anybody who'd like to, Janista, I can see you. Off you go. If you remember to unmute first, and then you can ask the question. There we go.
I just didn't want to get that, let that mention of DCMS and the lack of support from DCMS go by. That's the first time I've heard it put quite so starkly. And I think, certainly speaking as a member of the House of Lords, I'd be very interested to know, not necessarily this minute, but at some point, how we can press that. I'm looking at Jane Bonham Carter, who's listening intently. I think it's something we really ought to pull some threads out of to find out what's going on, because that is really profoundly unhelpful, I would say.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to pick that theme up before we go back to Gerald on it? Same theme, Jane. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, Jenny got there before me, but I absolutely agree. I was very shocked by that, and I do think that is something that where we can help you, Gerald. Please help us to help you.
And Jane, just to give you an example, I've done this job as chair of the Culture, Tourism and Sport Board for 3.5 years. I'm yet to meet the Secretary of State. We've sent 7 letters to ask for meetings, and none of them appeared to have arrived. We eventually worked through the Secretary of State's council leader to broker that he'd come to meet the board, but that then was cancelled. So we have a 20-minute meeting scheduled for next month. No, sorry, this month. So I just think there's a real issue that if local government are putting in £1 billion into the arts every year, which is twice what the Arts Council put in, would we have ever thought that the Secretary of State wouldn't meet the chair of the Arts Council for 3.5 years? Answer, no. But there just doesn't seem to be any recognition within DCMS that councils do put that amount of money in. And that makes it really difficult for me to argue with councils that they should defend the budgets that they've got for arts and culture, because there are so many other pressures. I can't say to somebody, no, you can't take that kid into care, we don't have any money. That has to always trump other things. But the lack of support from DCMS is very, very worrying.